What's up, buddy? How you been? Hope you've been having fun. Hope you've been reading some good comics. And maybe one of the comics you've read, well, not a good comic, I'm not going to say that, but it is a comic, is the newly released Alphacore #1 from Eric July's Rippaverse Studios. This book is currently raised $1.1 million, and of course, as people say about the Rippaverse, this is the future of comics. This is the parallel economy. This Marvel and DC with their wokeness and their terrible writers and whatever else. And I'll admit I have some criticisms of Marvel and DC as well. But this is the solution. The solution is, again, to throw all your money at the Rippaverse. This is what's going to save comics. And of course, I think people know I'm very skeptical of that message. I think, yes, you could say, hey, Marvel and DC comics suck, but that doesn't automatically make your comics good just because they aren't Marvel or DC. And as we've seen from other Rippaverse studio releases, obviously ISOM, the flagship title, this is not a good comic book universe. Now, Alphacore 1 had a lot of hype. Why? It's written by Chuck Dixon.
Hey, I'm Chuck Dixon, and I've been invited to join the Rippaverse. Eric July has assigned me a 90-page graphic novel called Alphacore.
People who are longtime comic fans will know Chuck Dixon. I think primarily a DC Comics writer, creator of Bane, possibly co-creator. I don't know the full history. All I know, a longtime comic writer. I've been told his Robin work was very good, writing The Adventures of the Boy Wonder. In more recent years, Chuck Dixon obviously has kind of gotten away from the mainstream comic industry, helped make the QAnon comic known as Alt Hero Q. He also did the graphic novel adaptation of Clinton Cash, a graphic novel about how the Clintons are, psychopaths and murderers. So when Eric July said, I can't believe I got Chuck Dixon, I said anybody can get Chuck Dixon. Peter Schweizer got Chuck Dixon. Vox Day got Chuck Dixon to make, again, a QAnon comic book. Okay, this is not a big get. I'm not saying Chuck Dixon's the worst writer that ever existed, but, this is not... Congrats on getting Chuck. He's an old man who writes fun comics. At least he knows, I'll say this. The problem with the Rippaverse has been a complete unawareness of classic plot structure and character arcs and whatever else. At least Chuck Dixon understands some of it. But, and here's the argument I'm going to make. Chuck Dixon is a guy who most famously has written characters that already existed. Okay, he wrote Batman, he wrote Robin, he wrote other DC characters that were not created by him. He was not doing introductory issues. Okay, he was not introducing new characters. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, and maybe the introduction of Bane was handled expertly by Chuck Dixon, but for the most part, he was not writing origin stories. Alphacore #1. This is an origin story. Or, well, not an origin story because it takes place further on in their careers, but this is the introductory story introducing the audience to these three characters. Yes, they've appeared in ISOM already, but this is the chance to really tell us who they are and what they can do, and most importantly, why they do it. That's the most important part. I'm going to say this. I think the who they are, it's pretty much there. I got an idea of, these guys are super cops, fine. What they can do, they have various powers, mostly seems to be super strength, magic whips, and again, this guy's just kind of like a Superman, okay? He can fly around and punch guys, invulnerable. Okay, I got that. Here's what's missing. The why. Why do they do it? And I'm going to argue that's the most crucial part of an origin issue, of an introductory issue. Without the why, I don't care about these people, and the audience is not going to care about them either. Chuck Dixon has put together an interesting little heist narrative. I don't know what you want to call it. Secret backdoor dealings, and the super cops have to put the pieces together and figure out the clues. That's all solid, and that's all expertly put together. But it's missing the why. It's missing the why do these guys do what they do. And ultimately, it is such a fatal flaw that I cannot recommend this comic. This comic has failed at the most important job, which was telling us why we should care about these characters. Okay, so I want to give you a couple examples, and I'm going to give you examples from the world of manga, okay? Because manga First of all, unlike Marvel and DC, which seems to rarely introduce new characters, every new manga starts off with a new set of characters. And they have nailed, the Shonen Jump model has nailed the introductory chapter, the origin story, telling us who these characters are and why we should care. I have a little collection of that over on my Twitter. Let's take a look. Now, as I've said about the Rippaverse before, this applies as well to Isom, a character who just seems to react to what's going on around him, has no real driving force. I don't know what he wants. I don't know what he wants to do. And it seems to be that both Isom and Alphacore seem to be relying on other comic books where they go, well, you see a guy in a cape, you see a guy running around, therefore the reader should assume, well, they're heroes and they want to be heroic and they want to stop crime or whatever else. But you have to actually tell us that. You shouldn't just assume that we know that based on the mere fact that they're superheroes. And each superhero has a different reason why they're seeking justice. Something that's happened to them in the past, some instigating incident. And you need to tell us what that is and what drives them. Now remember, these examples all come from the world of manga. These are hugely selling manga titles with sales in the millions of volumes. We hear from these guys, Eric Chalai included, that the American comic industry needs to follow manga more closely, and yet they're ignoring, again, what I think is the most basic example of introducing a character, telling me what it is they want. Here's the examples I have. Okay. Choose any Shonen Jump series, read the pilot chapter in just 50 pages. You'll know exactly what the characters' powers are and the goal that drives them. Naruto. I have a demon fox inside me, and I'm going to be the greatest ninja of all time. Okay, we find that all out in the first chapter. Naruto, what is it you want? What are you driving towards? Well, here's the Hokage, the leader of our village, the most powerful ninja. I will surpass everyone who came before me. So I know everything about even from this one panel. If you told me nothing else about Naruto, from this one page, I would know who this character is. He's an impulsive young man. He's training to be a ninja, obviously talking to a mentor figure. He exists in a world where more powerful ninja have come before him, and him, with the impulsivity of youth, wants to be the greatest that ever came. One page, I can get that much information. One Piece, we learn that Luffy, he has stretchy powers from a magic fruit, and he wants to be king of the pirates. Again, he just says it. He can, and you can have characters just say it. You can have them be more subtle about it if you want. But again, I'm going to be king of the pirates. That's it. That's his declaration. We immediately know everything we need to know about this character. Not to mention, I'll say his powers are very well defined. Both of these characters' powers are very well defined. He's a ninja. He has certain mystical powers. We find that out in the first issue. Luffy, he can stretch his body like a rubber band. Again, we talk about the Rippaverse. I don't know what Isom's powers are. I barely understand the Alphacore's powers. Again, they just seem like brutes, like bruisers. Some of them can fly, some cannot. And without that information, the story flounders. If you're writing a superhero story, and this was a point I wanted to bring up, look at the Fantastic Four. Just looking at this team and seeing their powers, there's so many storytelling opportunities. You have the Bruiser, the Rock Man. He can punch his way through everything. You have the man who can light himself on fire, fire-based powers. I can think of a million scenarios where the ability to control fire is going to become very useful. A stretchy guy. All sorts of things. Can, stretch up his body, make himself into a human shield, whatever else. And a woman who can turn invisible. Espionage. Catching the bad guys off guard. This is why you come up with creative and interesting powers. Okay, unlike Alphacore, where everyone is just very strong and can punch guys. I don't actually see the difference in their powers, really. It would be interesting if some of them were more specialized at certain things other than the rest of the team, but they all kind of just punch guys. I'm sure maybe their powers will seem more different in the future, but as of right now, the Alphacore all seem to just be guys who punch. Okay, 2 more examples from Shonen Jump. Death Note. I have a notebook that can kill people. I know his powers, and that's a great power. A notebook that kills people. The amount of storytelling opportunities there are infinite as compared to Alphacore, which is, I'm Superman. I've seen that Superman before. I don't need another Superman. I don't need a green Superman. Why don't you give him some unique powers you can ride around? Regardless, the why, the what do you want? What do you desire? That's the most important part. I have a notebook that can kill people. I will use it to forge a new utopia. The world will become a better place. No one will commit crimes anymore. They will know that someone is passing judgment on criminals. This is a character motivation. This is interesting. This is a great hook. And that's what your first issue needs. You need a hook to keep people reading. Dragon Ball. Even something, and then remember, Dragon Ball started off as a gag manga. This was just funny. You were just supposed to laugh at the silly adventures, but even this nails what's going on. I'm an idealistic, impressionistic kid. I have incredibly strong powers. Okay, you know, I'm a very powerful little kid. Maybe my powers are magical. Who knows? Point is, I, who have been trapped in this village forever, I'm going to finally strike out on my first adventure and help this lady find all the magic Dragon Balls. Again, this is a more simplistic thing. This is not really driven by anything other than ignorance. Okay, Goku does not start off as a character with a great passion for something. But regardless, he says, you know what, that sounds fun. I'm along for the ride. And that's enough. We, the audience, know, okay, he wants to get out, he wants to explore, he wants to help this girl, and he wants to finally see the outside world. That's enough. That's fascinating. Alphacore, what do they want? What do they do? Let's take a look at them again. The Alphacore are, again, a Superman guy, a guy who doesn't talk. Has the this is not a superhero costume. This is just a jacket. And a lady with, I think, laser whips or something. Okay. And all I know is they're cops. Now, again, you're forcing the reader to make assumptions. You're forcing the reader to go, well, I know a little bit about superheroes, and I definitely know something about cops, so I'm going to assume, I don't know, these guys like busting criminals or whatever. But they shouldn't have to make those assumptions, and those assumptions are not interesting. Okay? Because, again, we're talking about superhero cops. That's an idea. If you had incredible powers, let's put it this way. If you were Superman level powers, and maybe this guy's a little weaker than Superman, but regardless, all three of these people have incredible powers. So, what would you do? Would you A, become a criminal, start breaking into banks? Why not? You're more powerful than any regular human out there. Would you become a vigilante? Why work for anyone else? You have these powers, so you could become a freak show. You could use your powers at the circus, make millions of dollars. So something in these characters' lives, all three of them, made them think, I have incredible powers beyond that of any normal human. And because of that, I'm going to become a law enforcement officer. What causes that? What is an instigating incident? What is a driving ideology that makes somebody with incredible powers beyond the realm of human imagination go, I want to use those powers to work for the government as a police officer? Which seems mundane. Of all the things you could choose, being a cop? Isn't that a waste of your powers? What is so exciting about that? And you go, of course there is a way to tell us about these characters and to tell us, well, here is what happened to them and why they made this choice. Brian Solari, he saw his mother die. Or no, he's a army guy in the story. So he saw people die on the battlefield in the Great Battle of Texas, and he said, never again will I allow this to happen on my homeland. We have the lady, whose name I forget, Valerie or something. She, who saw her mother die in front of her to superpowered criminals, said, never again will I allow that to happen to a private citizen. And Braxwell, a man wrestling with, I don't know, his own personal demons, who needs a safe outlet for the anger inside him, and thankfully with criminals, he has a target to beat people up and not end up in jail himself. These are three scenarios I've made off the top of my head. They are not contained in the comic itself. All we learn in the comic itself is they're cops. Why are they cops? I don't know. And here's their adventure. This is not how you write an origin story, guys. You got to tell me why they're doing it. I went through the whole book, back to front. I read it twice. I said, at some point, there needs to be a motivation somewhere here that I've missed. Somewhere in this book, they're going to tell me exactly why Alphacore became Alphacore. We don't get it. You don't get it. And that's why this book fails. I'm going to give some specific examples from the book. I'll try to limit my screenshots because I know Eric Jalea is a very litigious individual who files false DMCA claims against his critics. We'll see if this video gets struck by the great Eric Jalea. Now, the book opens. There is a suicide bomber, he's a bank robber using a bomb vest to try and rob the bank, telling everyone, back off or I'll blow up the bomb vest. And again, there's a lot I could talk about in this comic, but I'm going to try and focus specifically on the three main characters and the lack of information about what drives them, which is this book's fatal flaw. And I don't know if Chuck Dixon just isn't used to writing origins or what, but it's just so obvious what's missing here. Okay, so we have Solari, and we find out that he's a cocky guy. He teases the bad guy. This is actually good. And again, I said I'd talk about things that are good. A Superman character who has great powers, you imagine he would be a bit cocky. He's more powerful than anyone else. Bullets cannot hurt him. Cockiness is to be expected. Superman, he's a little more of a nice guy, but again, he was a farm boy. Solari, I believe former Army, maybe a little younger than a Superman. He's a bit more cocky, a bit more brash, but ultimately a good guy. Okay, so that's interesting. We have a cocky Superman. But why is he cocky? What is, again, define this character. I like his personality. I actually like the personality of Solari. It's a change of pace. He's a little bit of a goofball. He makes mistakes later on in the book. He's not a perfect character. I thought he was going to be a very stoic badass. But Chuck Dixon is good at giving characters some personality. But I still don't know what drives him. And it's such a fatal flaw for the book, where I go, I want to like this character, but honestly, when I get down to it, I know his personality, but I know nothing else about him. Now, he is chided by, I guess, a police sergeant or something, kind of confusing exactly. There's a relationship between the cops and the Alphacore. I guess the Alphacore are a division of the police, though they act far more like a military unit. Again, it's a lot to touch on. But the Alphacore's job is to only intervene when Accepts, which are the superpowered individuals of this universe, are involved in a crime. If it's an Accept-related situation, then they can swing in. Of course, Solari has broken the rules by dealing with this bank bomber. The man did not have powers, and therefore he was not supposed to intervene. This creates a situation where, the city is mad, saying, oh, this is out of hand. What if they start intervening in everything? Okay, kind of interesting. Honestly, good plot point. But, again, this guy tells him you're only supposed to come when it's a freak call. So that establishes a few things about this universe. One, that means the idea of Accepts, superpowered individuals, is either a very recent phenomenon or a very rare phenomenon or both. Okay? Because the idea in this universe that they are considered freaks, this is a freak call, means that this must be a very rare occurrence, that there's not a lot of Accepts around. It's a little confusing because you go, well, then, if Accepts are considered freaks and hated, again, you think of the X-Men, mutants, muties, oh my god, these horrible mutants, whatever else. Would the public ever accept a mutant police force? They seem the equivalent of mutants, these Accepts. But why would they hate Accepts if they see guys like Alphacore going around and stopping superpowered individuals? I don't know. That's all very interesting and maybe is unrelated to my general point. But I'm trying to understand these characters and what drives them. Are they driven by, again, like many mutants, and a core driving factor for many X-Men books is this idea of discrimination. What do you do in the face of discrimination? Magneto, who faces discrimination, says, well, fuck you guys, fuck humanity, I'll destroy you all and make a mutant paradise. Professor X faces discrimination. He says, no, we must stay the course, we must foster understanding. By not nailing this down, again, I'm further in the dark as to who these characters are and why they do what they do. Another point of confusion, and again, something that would have explained more to me about these characters, Alphacore apparently operates out of a shield helicarrier, a big flying fortress, where I go, I thought they were cops. How did they get a flying... This seems military, okay? I think of a flying carrier base as a military thing, not a police thing, okay? The city paid for this. But if they're not military, if they are cops, do they live on this base? Okay, because in the military, you live where you're stationed. If you have a giant floating base or a regular base, if you have an aircraft carrier or a submarine, you're stuck there for 4 years as part of the military. Alphacore, though, are cops. Cops don't live at the police station. Cops go home at the end of the day to their families. So the whole book, I was waiting for it to tell me, are these guys military guys who live on the base and have committed to a certain tour of duty and they're being well paid? Are they paid? I hope they make money. Okay. So have they committed to living on this base, which is a very unique type of individual signs up for this? Or again, are they cops and they go home to their families at the end of the night? And if so, show me their families. Let me meet those families. If we're talking about cop dramas, there's the old it's become a meme now. South Park makes fun of it, of the tired detective who at the end of the day goes home to his wife and his kids, okay? Even comics do it. We look at, what's his name? Commissioner Gordon, the tired detective at the end of the day goes home to his family, and that helps define the character, learning about relationships they have with other characters. But I don't know anything about Alphacore. I don't know if they have family. I don't know if they have friends. I don't even know if they go home at the end of the night. I don't know if they just live. For all I know, the Alphacore at the end of the day goes and sleeps in a cryogenic chamber somewhere on their floating base. Okay? I don't know if these are real people. They could be robots. They could be clones. They could be psychopath cyborgs. Okay? You have to show me their relationships with other people, not just, you know, other military guys, other cops. Show me their relationships with real people, families, friends, whatever else. Without that, again, I know nothing about these people. It seems like they just pull them again out of a cryopod, have them punch the bad guys, and then send them back. They don't feel real. The only character interactions we get is between them. It is interesting that Valdez and Solari, Brian, have this little argument about, you know, what publicity tours they're doing and signing autographs. That's interesting, sure. But again, the only relationships we learn about are the relationships between the Alphacore. We never learn about any outside of the relationships they have. And we also never learn, again, the most important thing, why are they doing this? Why are they here? If they're on the spaceship or whatever it is, the floating base, they're arguing. They're clearly upset. Okay, this is not a fun job. This is a hard job that involves putting yourself in the firing line, in the line of danger. Okay, you're risking your life. So what do you get out of it? What are you doing it for? Is it for money? Is it fame? Is it honor? Is it duty? Is it dignity? Is it what? Why are you here? You can't just say they're super cops and expect the audience to pick it up from there. The worst character, of course, is going to be Braxwell. Just a stupid-looking character. Just a guy in a helmet and a jacket who doesn't say anything. I see people saying, they go, well, you know, he's like, whatever that one G.I. Joe is. Is it Storm Shadow or is it the other one? I don't remember. There's two G.I. Joes, and I think only one of them talks. The ninjas. Okay, it's like, whatever. Someone compared them to silent video game protagonists. That's a bad comparison. But yes, I understand that silent assassin characters have existed, or just silent bruisers. That can be interesting. But it's not interesting here, because I know nothing about this guy. Again, if you showed me him going home to his family at the end of the day, if you showed me him, anything, a small thing, him looking at a photograph of a lost lover, looking at a photograph of a daughter back home, something that tells me who this character is, just telling me he's a guy in a helmet who shows up and punches people and doesn't say anything, what a waste. What a waste. And I'm going to say this, look, you got 3 characters here. You don't have to tell me everything about all of them. Maybe Braxwell, you could save it for another issue. Or Solari, you could dig into his past in another issue. But you have 3 different characters here in about 100 pages. I should leave the book knowing something about one of them. One of them should be the focus of the narrative. I should know about that character. All 3 of them, we get nothing. I'll say this. When Solari talks about the army, very briefly, he says, well, this is how we did it in the army. At one point, he says, in the army, we had a saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. I don't know if that's an army saying, but it is a popular saying. Why not talk about your army experience a little bit? Just a little bit. Doesn't have to go on forever. Give me a page. Give me 2 pages. Okay? Solari, why do you do what you do? Solari, you're pushing yourself too hard. Solari, you're putting yourself in harm's way. Why do you do this? And all he has to do is go, I'm here because... There's a million different answers to that question. Again, drawing on the army experience, I saw a man die in front of me. My best friend was killed by an accept platoon. And I said, never again will I allow a man to die to these powers. These powers that I have, do the old Spider-Man thing. With great powers come great responsibility. Yes, it's eye-rollingly, you know, trite at this point, and we've seen it from everyone. But at least there's something there. At least there's something telling me what drives this character. Or completely catch me off guard. Have him say, I'm here for the money, baby. All right, I'm here for that sick government pension. I do this for 4 years, then I retire fat and happy. Have him say, I'm in it for the fame. I want to be a big man. I want everyone to know the name of Brian Solari. Give me any reason why he's doing it. And the reason can't be because he's a cop. Okay? Because... then the question is, why is he a cop? And the answer can't be because he's a cop. No. Why is he a cop? Again, a man with incredible powers. Why does he choose to use them for law enforcement? You have to tell me. And you had 100 pages to do it. And again, same as ISOM. You had 100 pages to tell me what ISOM wants. You didn't do it. You had 100 pages to tell me what Braxwell and Valdez and Brian Solari want. You didn't do it. It's crazy. The closest we get in the whole book to like something meaningful is there's this character named Wilkins. He's a cop. He's honestly the best character in the story. I won't spoil it, but I will say, why not just make him a member of the Alphacore? He's honestly better than all three of the other characters. He's more interesting, has more going on, has way more room to grow, okay? Because we find out that this guy is also an Accept. He has very minor powers. Valdez even tells him, you can actually grow those powers. You might think that your powers are weak, but it's like a muscle. If you train it, it will grow, and you could have incredible powers. And we see he has a character arc. He's the only character in the book who has an arc, where he actually does grow his powers. And his powers end up more powerful at the end of the book than they were when it begins. It's so crazy. The only character arc belongs to this minor character who's not a part of the main cast. And there's a moment where she chastises him because she thinks he's calling her a freak. Then later she finds out that Wilkins has powers and goes, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I thought you were calling me a freak. But, it turns out you're a freak just like us. And I go, okay, you're right there. You're right on the fucking edge. You have Valdez having a real emotional moment. This badass, hardcore chick punches everybody, doesn't take no shit, fights with Brian on the bridge, fighting with everybody. Okay, just a tough, kick-ass lady is having an emotional moment. And what she's essentially saying is, again, reinforcing this kind of X-Men theme of people look at us as freaks. Okay, people call us part of the freak show. Okay, and me, even as hardcore, and even though I've developed this hardcore persona to deal with it, that I don't take no shit and I'm a badass lady, it still hurts when I think someone's calling me a freak, and that's why I lashed out at you. And I'm happy to know, Wilkins, that I have a friend and someone who understands. You understand what it is to have these powers and not be able... You who have hidden your powers and won't even tell anyone about it because you're worried of being branded a freak, the same that they've branded me. And I go, you're so fucking close, Chuck Dixon. You're so close. Because you know what you do in this situation? You have Valdez go to Wilkins, and she goes, let me buy you a drink. Okay? And you know what you do? You cut to the bar. It's Valdez and Wilkins sitting at the bar, drinking a couple brews. And Valdez will say the most important thing she could possibly say, she'll say, you know why I got into this job? That's it. That's your linchpin. That's your moment.
Hey, how did you get like this? I want to know.
It wasn't one thing, I can tell you that.
Do you know why I do this? Wilkins? Do you know why I picked up the badge? Do you know why I joined Alphacore? And Wilkins will go, no, tell me. And there, give me 2 pages, 3 pages, whatever it is. She can tell a little story. She can give a little personal history. She can just give her motivation. She could say what she's seen. She could say what drives her. And again, millions of possibilities. I saw someone die, and it made me realize I'd use my powers for good. Or I was branded a freak, and my friend, I've seen horrible things happen to Accepts, and Accepts have this horrible reputation. I want to prove to the world that Accepts can be a force for good. Or again, I don't know, go nuts with it and have her say, I want to be the greatest pop star that ever lived. I have a singing voice like you wouldn't believe, and I think the path to stardom. Okay, you're not going to do that, but infinite possibilities that she could lay out and say, this is who I am, this is what drives me. Doesn't happen. Immediately after this moment, Wilkins, where she goes, I thought you called me a freak. Turns out you're a freak too. Us freaks got to stick together. Perfect opportunity to tell us who these characters are. Instead, we just get back to this pointless villain heist plot. Okay? And ultimately, I'm going to say, again, this book failed. It's a fail. It's a failure of a book. This is issue 8. This is the throwaway issue. This is the issue where we've already established the team and we're not really sure what to do and we don't want to start any new major arcs. So I don't know, just do like a 100-page heist thing, with like a bank vault and the bad guys are trying to blow up the bank and, there's a USB stick. Okay, a little intrigue, mystery story or whatever it is you want to call it. This is a throwaway issue. This should not be your issue number 1. This should not be your debut. This should not be your origin story. We learn nothing about these characters other than they are cops. They're cops who live on a floating military base for some reason. We don't know where they live. We don't know where they sleep. We don't know if they have family. We don't know what their compensation is. We don't know what drives them. And that's it. You cannot have an origin story without telling me why the characters do what they do. 100 fucking pages. And you have to give me something. Some hint at what drives them. Now, again, I'm sure at some point we're going to find out. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe issue 2. We're going to flash back and find out what happened to Solari in the war. We're going to find out who cut Braxwell's tongue out and why he can't say anything interesting. And we're going to find out about why Valdez feels discriminated against, which again is, that's woke. It's woke to do a discrimination plot line, Eric, so you probably can't do it. You can't have mutants being discriminated against in the Rippaverse, because that would be woke. But you should have done it here. And that's been the big problem with the Rippaverse. I've said this before. Eric July keeps talking about, it's a slow burn. Today's audiences are spoiled. Yeah, they are. You know why? Because I can go on Netflix and there's 1,000 different TV shows. I can go on some comic book website. I can go on my Shonen Jump app, which I have on my phone, and there's literally like 1,000 different Shonen Jump comics for me to read. Okay? How often have you heard this phrase? I watched the first episode, it didn't grab me, so I stopped watching. That's it. You live in an era where media has become so disposable that if you cannot hook the viewer, if you cannot hook the reader in the first 20 pages, in the first 10 minutes, you're fucked. That's it. So, you had 100 pages to give me a hook, to tell me why I should buy Alphacore number 2. You failed. Same thing with Isam. You had 100 pages or whatever it was to tell me why Isam's a great character and what's going to keep me coming back. You failed. The fundamental flaw of the Rippaverse has been identified. And the fundamental flaw of the Rippaverse is we have no reason to care about these characters. And whatever information we are given about their backstories, their histories, or their motivations, it is flimsy, it is nonsensical, it is confusing, or it is just not there. So, what can I say to Eric July? I don't know, man. You got a good thing going. You're still making $1 million per comic. I would just say, I don't know, man. You gotta hire some story editors. You gotta get some guys to come in. I know you thought, well, I'll get Chuck Dixon because he's famous and he'll know what to do. But you still need an architect for this universe, and it's clear you don't know how to do it. You need to find a guy who understands what you're trying to accomplish here. A guy who understands, especially origin stories. These are all origin stories you're doing. He's someone who sits down and looks at Chuck Dixon's script and he says, Chuck, you got a great little story here and it's got some fun twists and some fun turns, but at the end of the day, I need you to tell me more about these characters. The little adventure they're going on is not interesting to me. Again, I compare it to like, what do you call it? Like Ocean's 11. You find out a little bit about everybody. You find out who they are, their backstories. They've been doing it forever. You know, they're old buddies getting back together. And it drives the story. Without knowing who these people are, there is no story. There is nothing here. This is, frankly, a waste of everybody's time. And that's what we're getting from the parallel economy. We're getting a lot of guys who go, well, the problem with DC and Marvel is that it's woke. It's woke. If it wasn't woke, it would be good. I'll say this. The comic's not woke. You know, there's no feminism or forced diversity or any of that, but there's also no plot. There's also no character motivation. There's also no character arc. It's just a big waste of time. And this idea that you found the silver bullet, that the only thing you need to do is respect the customer by not putting woke shit in the book. It's a great pitch. It's a great pitch that has earned you, millions of dollars, but it has not resulted in a single decent comic book. And that is a tragedy. Guys, that's my review of Alphacore number 1. Again, it's something to read, I guess. You can read it. It's got a story, but the characters are nothing. If I had to give it a something out of 10, 2 out of 10, 2.5, because again, there's a little bit of humor. The characters are, I like some of their attitudes and they're interesting. I just don't know who they are or why I should care. I don't even want to say it's a big disappointment because I was not expecting a lot out of this to begin with, but it's just crazy to me that people are still propping this up as the future of comics. I just don't see it. It's bad. Even the worst Shonen Jump comic is better than this. Just, again, and if you're a writer and you want to make great comics, I'm going to tell you, Go read the first chapter of every Shonen Jump comic. And you're going to learn so much more than you would ever learn from something like Alphacore or ISOM. And even the worst Shonen Jump chapter, first chapter, will tell you who the character is, what they can do, and why they do it. That's the formula. It's a simple formula. Figure it out. More cool videos coming soon. If you want a good comic book, check out superkiller.org. Back it on Indiegogo. I'll tell you this. You're going to get to the end of that comic, and you're going to know what's going on. You're going to know the powers. You're going to know who's doing what and why they're doing it. You're going to have a good time. Have fun. Bye-bye.